Here we go. Thanks for that, Dan. Right, so first up, I'm going to show you what we're going to create. In today's session. Right, so here's the map we're going to be working towards creating, and it is containing police data, and every data used in this map is all freely available. And the data which we are wanting to show in our map, we have it in CSV files, and then we read those into QGIS. And this map, we're going to be plotting the 5 headquarter locations of the police, and then creating different styles for the points depending on whether it's just police or also fire and rescue. We're also going to be plotting the number of antisocial behavior or some type of crime per lower super output area. And for those that aren't aware, so lower super output areas, LSOAs, they are a way of the government divide the population into regions such that each one has roughly 1,500 people in each. So by nature, LSOAs in cities are smaller due to more densely populated than the rural areas. So in this example, as we're going through, we're using 2 types of data sets, because we've got our point data set, which are recorded. We have like a latitude and a longitude, so an exact position for that point, and we provide this to QGIS, and QGIS can work with this data and put the point on the map. Whereas if we have information about an area, so in our case for an LSOA, but you could have, for example, postcode sector or counties, then we need to make use of another file, which is called Shapefiles, and they provide a visualization of the boundary. And so there'll be a shapefile for counties and a shapefile for these LSOAs. And I'll go into that more later. So in order to make this map, we need to have QGIS installed, and we need our 2 CSV files for our data, the point data and the LSOA data, and also the shapefile. So I'm going to show you our 2 CSV files that we're going to use, which hopefully you've taken a local copy of. So this is our headquarters CSV file. So this contains the data which are going to give us the points on the map. So for each row in the file, we have a location of the headquarters with the name. We've got the address, postcode, lat long, and on the far right, a Boolean about whether it is also a fire and rescue site. So this data I got by Googling. I found just the address and postcode for all the headquarters in the Southwest. And using the postcode, because QGIS can't plot postcodes, I then use an online resource to translate that then into a latitude and longitude, which QGIS can take and use directly. So the other data, which is here, which I got just to show it's all freely available. I downloaded it from the police data. And this gives us for each, so each row is an LSOA, which is one of those like polygon regions with 1,500 people roughly living there. And each LSOA has a unique code. And then associated with each LSOA, then we've got counts of crime in that code, split per types of crime. So because this data contains this LSOA code, which QGIS doesn't know what to do with, we need to make use of shapefiles in order to display it in QGIS. So shapefiles, we get them from the internet. We Google it, find a location, and download them. So just to demonstrate that. So here we are looking for LSOA. There we go, autofill, very good. LSOA shapefile boundaries. And I know for this data, we need the version from 2011. There is a version from 2001. But I know for this one, we need 2011. GeoPorto statistics. This is ideally where you will find your shapefiles. So following that, it's taking me to, this is a point data of population weighted centroids. So it's more of a, usually it gives you a little preview screen. Oh, here they come. Of, so that one isn't the exact one we want. And if we scroll down here, we can find there's one here for boundaries. And then we go over this download button and we download the shapefile. Okay, so just, let's say, for example, if we're doing something on counties. So again, here we go, GeoPorto statistics, counties. Yeah, so usually this gives you a preview of the county's shapefile. It's all a bit slow. But anyway, so you download the shapefile here. So once you have, so when you download your shapefile, it is usually as a zip file, and that is because in order to have the shapefile is made up of a number of individual files, as we can see here, and they need to be kept in the same location. So keeping them in a zip folder is a fail-safe way of doing so. And there are 3 of these files, the .shx, the .shp, and the .dbf. They're the 3 compulsory files that you need to have in order for it to work. The other ones you can have or not. So the .dbf file, the database file, this is like your Excel table with a row for each of your polygons and your fields in the columns. So that's your database file. Then I'm just going to mention this one here, the .prj. This is your projection file. And this contains information about what projection is being used for this shapefile. And what a projection does is it's a method for taking information about a 3D object, so in our case, the globe, and how to represent it on a 2D surface, so on our screen. And so there's no single correct way of doing this, because you're always going to have some elements of distortion. And so different projections are trying to preserve different qualities of the data. So for example, some will try and preserve the shape, some the area, some the distance, and so on. So a number of these projections exist. And hopefully, as you're working with QGIS and your data, you won't have to do too much about projections with your data because they'll be correctly set up. But there are cases, as in always, this can, something's going a little bit awry. So I'm going to cover a little bit more about projections as we're going through to give you hopefully enough understanding to use them if it becomes necessary. And hands up, I I don't know a huge amount about projections, but I tend to find I know just enough to make my data work. So if there's anyone here who knows more and wants to chip in and I can learn today as well, that would be fantastic. There's more information on shape files there's obviously a Wikipedia page if you're interested in knowing what all the individual files do. So when we're in QGIS, as I say, if we have data which is just point data and they have the latitude and longitude, we can read that in, tell QGIS to use the latitude and longitude, and it can plot those points. In the case when we have our LSOA data, we read in our data and we tell QGIS to take the column with the code. We read in our shapefile, and again, we point to the column in the database file, which contains the code, and we do what's called a table join, and that way we can then plot the values of our data in the shapefile. Oh, and just say, when we're in QGIS, don't need to worry about the fact that there's lots of files that make up the shapefile. When we're in QGIS, it will just be as though it is a single file. Right, so as I say, the structure of today, I'm just going to show you this document. So this is the QGIS training with pen called PDF. And so I'm going to, or can I just ask, does anyone not have two screens or this as a printout? Is anyone going to be flipping between their windows? Oh, I like that pause. That's great. So that's super. I'm glad that's happening, because I think you'll get a lot more from today.
Sue, there's a couple in the chat that are saying that. I technically am too, but I've got a big monitor. So.
Okay, so because people are trying to watch my demo as well as have the documentation on the same screen, I'll try and remember to, as I go through certain chapters in a bunch, I'll pause to give you a chance then to put your screen across so you can just familiarize yourself with what the content looks like in this document. So then when I set you off to replicate it, it'll be more familiar. So if people with their printouts and screens, get yourself to chapter 2, that's where we're going to start from. And I'll just get myself set up. Okay, so first up, going to open QGIS. So this is the welcome window as such, and yours will look differently when you first open it because you won't have set up the toolbars and the panels the same. But so in the middle here, it will allow you to easily access your recent QGIS projects or open a new one. So this is what you'll be doing. Open a new project, or you could use this icon up here. Either way, we're in QGIS. So in this empty project, this big bit, white bit in the middle here is known as the map canvas. And as I'm moving my mouse around here, you can see down the coordinates are moving. This is where our maps are going to be visualized. Whilst it displays what scale we are at, neither it displays what we're at, or we can override this and we can type in the scale we'd like. And over here we have the project's projection, which we'll come on to later. And this down here is known as our status bar. Right, so as in most softwares, at the top we have our menu. Then we have our toolbars either at the top or down the side. These are set by going to view. Why is that not? So I need to move my zoom bar to the side. Sorry. Right, now I can access it. You're going to view, toolbars, and you make your selections of which toolbars to have to show. This is what I'll ask you to be doing in the first exercise, and I've included in the PDF which ones to select. Similarly, panels. These are also controlled under View Panels. So the ones we'll use today is this browser panel in order for you to, you can access documents on your computer or some other online resources. Here we have our layers panel, and as we are bringing in our data, our maps, each one will be listed in this layer panel, and you'll be able to toggle them on and off and drag and drop and slide them to order. With the top one will be drawn on the top. It's common sense. Yeah, so the ordering of the layers in this layer panel is the ordering in which they are shown in your map canvas. When you select one of your layers here, over in your layers styling, that will show you the symbology for that layer. So here is where we're going to determine what our layers look like. So if people want to have a quick flip their screen across to look at the chapter 2 documentation on the PDF before I move to chapter 3. Okay, so moving on to chapter 3. So base maps. So for our example today, we are looking at just the southwest of England. And so by just having a map of the southwest of England floating around on a white space, we need to use base maps in order to give it context. And I'm going to show you two options. One we're not going to use today because it will mean our projects will be quite sluggish. And it's an online resource here under browser, under the XYZ files. We have OpenStreetMap. And by either double clicking on it or dragging and dropping it on the map canvas or dropping it in the layers panel, it will now appear on our map canvas. And this is a very useful resource to have. It gives a nice quality to the base maps. It has quite a lot of, just going to scroll in to southwest. So it has quite a nice amount of detail with rows. So specifically for any work where you're doing travel times and you're locating your services in certain cases and in certain locations, and you've got what looks like potentially odd results in your travel time, when you then can look at where the main roads are, sometimes that helps to understand what the data's doing. So that's a nice base map to have. But as I say, it can slow down your project. So let's remove that for today. So for today as our base map, we're going to use a simple world map, and we can access that easily in this coordinates field. It's a really weird way of getting it. You type world in the coordinates, and this is bringing up, it's essentially a shapefile for the world. So we can see over here, the world map name has been put into the layers panel, and we can turn it on and off. The map is now being displayed in the map canvas. And over here on the layers styling panel, we can see the symbology that's been selected. So single symbol means that for each polygon, they're having the same visualization for all, and it has been defined as this rather dull gray. Also down here on the right, the projection for the project has been set as this EPSG 4326, and we'll go into that a bit later. Okay, for those of you who want to quickly switch your screens across and have a look at the chapter 3 document.
Kerry, I think there were a couple of requests just to show how the world map was opened.
Oh, okay, thank you. So world map, so this is all in the documentation as you're going through, it's all spelt out, but you go into the coordinates bar down here and you type in world. And then that opens it. This is a weird feature that it's just to give you a very quick access to the world shapefile. So you don't bring in any other of your data in this way. You use more normal standard ways. This is just a built-in way to give you the world map shapefile. Okay, so moving on to chapter 4. So I'm going to show you how you navigate around your screen. So as I said before, when you move your mouse, you can see the coordinates changing here. And at the moment, I've got it on this hand, the pan, where you click and drag and drop. So this is the way of moving the map around. So all the map navigation icons are up in this section here. And anything that has yellow on, it is referring to any features that are selected. So in the moment, we're going to start selecting some features, and then the icons that have yellow will act on just those features. So we haven't selected anything, but that would pan map to selection, that would bring our selected features into the center of the window. So you can zoom in and out with your mouse. And if you use control, then you have a more finer control zooming. Or if there's a specific place you want to go straight to, this plus, and we can go to England. And if you do the negative one, this works a bit oddly. You just put it places and it pans out, but in a random way. This one, zoom to full. So this brings your all your data layers into view, and that would zoom to any that are selected. This one zooms to any of the specific layers you had. So rather than this one does all your layers, this one will do to the layer that you have selected. These are useful for toggling backwards and forwards through previous zoom extents. Next, if you are, if the area you're looking at is large, but you're interested in two areas that are quite far from each other, you want to look at them in detail, you can use this map view, whereby if you zoom in, let's say we're interested in Spain, we can put Spain in its own separate map view. And then we're free then to go and look at Australia. And then we can look in detail at two independent views. So I'm just showcasing the functionality that you might find useful when you start using QGIS. And the final bit to show you here is having some specific views bookmarked so you can quickly jump between the two. So if I click here, show spatial bookmarks and user bookmarks. So I've already got a few set up. So let's set up a new one now for Australia. And it will be added to my bookmarks. So now I can go to Spain and Australia, Southwest England. It's just a way of easily navigating around your screen. Right, so I'm going to go and do a full extent view of my world map. So I could go up here, or the other option is to right click zoom to layer. And that brings me back to see my full view of the world map. So here we have the map visualization of this world map layer. So as you remember, I said if you have a shape file, you've also got that .dbf file. And when we're in QGIS, that is known as the attribute table. And that is accessed by this icon up here, Open Attribute Table. And a very useful feature is this button here, which is Doc Attribute Table, because that will nicely put it to the bottom of your screen, so you can now see both the map and also your table. And you can use like this table like Excel when you can sort on the columns and scroll through. And the relationship between this attribute table and this map is that for every polygon on this map has a corresponding row in the database file containing the fields. And so the way to link up between the two, so let's click here on Albania. So at the moment, it's telling us we've got 240 rows and none are currently selected. If I click on Albania, it's saying one is selected, and then on the map, it is anything selected is highlighted in yellow. And unless you know where Albania is, because it's quite small, you may not spot where it is, so you can use the icons which have the yellow on in order to zoom. This one is zoom to the selected feature. So by clicking that, it's going to take me to the polygon for the one I've selected here. So that's a way of going from looking at data in your database file and finding it on your map. Going the other way, here we have unselect all your features. And I'm going to zoom back to the full extent of my map. So to go the other way from getting information about what's in the database file based on an area on your map, there's two ways. You can use this identify feature, which will pop up here, a panel to store the results. So if I click on Russia, it's pulling up, you can always resize all these different panels. It's populated it with the data out of the database file. So I can click on Algeria, do Spain again, it's called and India. So just populating this panel with this data. The other way is using over here on the left, select features by click. So I can now click on the polygon. Now instead of the data being pulled into this panel here, it's selected it in my DBF, my database, my attribute table, I should say. And if you select this icon here, move selected to top, then as I click, make sure you scroll to the top, that helps. Then it will update and pull the row that you have selected on your map to the top of your table so you can look at the information. So I'm going to pause there. So if you would all like to go and run through chapters 2 to 5. And so you will be opening QGIS. Oh, what I'm going to do as well, let's save our project. So up here, project, save as, and then you can save your project, and then when you close QGIS and reopen it, there we go. It exists now in your recent projects, so you can easily get back to where you are. So yes, work through chapters 2 to 5, set up your panels and toolbars, bring in your world map, open up the attribute table and dock it, and just experiment with your navigating, zooming, panning, and clicking on the map using this select features and seeing it in the attribute table, selecting it in the attribute table and seeing it highlighted in yellow on the map and zoom to it in the map. Just get familiar with with this environment. So if I give you until 2:30, if we come back at 2:30, then we will continue. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. All right. So yeah, so I'm going to close off now and then rejoin at 2:30.
Right. Thanks, Kerry.